Welcome to our Soul and the City podcast. This is a community podcast which endeavors to make artistic strolls with fun, one city at a time, but more importantly, absorb, dissect, and reflect socially aware dialogues together with local wordsmiths, event organizers, artists, and art enthusiasts. My name is Soar, author and social innovator, and I will be co-hosting each episode with a team of international hosts and guests in the attempt to ignite and incite universal and individual insights. I'm super excited to see you all here. This is, as you know, our first episode of Soul and the City podcast series, which wants to be just a fun, witty, and socially engaged journey around the world as we try to delve into understanding and exploring and dissecting and empowering sparks of soul, as we call them, in every city that we visit, through our artistic communities, through international people, through interesting people. And we are debuting tonight with Prague, which was not an easy choice to break the ice with. And the title of this episode is Foreign Black Dumplings and Prague. And to help me in these intricacies, I have my co-host, Daniel, who is going to join me for the entire project, for the entire series. Daniel is, apart from being a great person and helping out with the project, he teaches literature in international school, which tells a lot about dealing daily with minorities and international aspects of Prague. And he lives in Prague with his family. And an interesting aspect of his bio is that he worked in Turkmenistan with the US Peace Corps. Hi, Daniel.
Hello. That was a quarter century ago, by the way, but it's alive in my heart every day. So yes, Turkmenistan. And I'll introduce Soar. Soar is a polyglot, a social innovator, and an ambassador for multilingual dialogue. She studied foreign languages and international relations and deals with 6 languages and cultures on a daily basis. So here we are with Soul of the City, and we're going to start with Prague. Historically and under the radar crossroads of Europe, the city's name in Czech actually translates to threshold, like a door between cultures east and west, south and north. How people have used such a door, even to this day, is a complex question. Right after the Velvet Revolution of 1989, Ivan Klima published a series of essays entitled The Spirit of Prague. He notes its beleaguered history of forced compliance to larger neighbors, but also a resiliency in what it means to be Bohemian. Czech life, Klima says, does not go in for a great deal of ostentation, for Barnum and Bailey-sized ads, fireworks, dazzling society balls, casinos, or grand military parades. It tends rather toward markets, seasonal festivals, and simple dances. And maybe in the generation since he wrote that, casinos and dazzling lights are more part of the cityscape than what had been the dreary gray pall of the communist years. Tourists then and now have always regarded the raw beauty of the city, but what about its soul?
That's right. That's a beautiful introduction, and that's why we're here. As I said, it was not easy to pick up the first city to present. And as I mentioned before, we want to focus mainly on 3 pillars, dealing with the artistic aspects and the opportunities that artists normally have in a multicultural city like Prague. Then we want to have the interesting, fun parts of the city, anything that we should do while in Prague or not miss, especially not miss while in Prague. More importantly, also the socially aware dialogues. We want to focus tonight on topics related to minority groups, ethnic groups, Blacks, LGBT, human rights, discrimination problems, the presence of expats, everything connected to an international life in this city. We will do that from the perspective of our guests. We have 4 amazing guests. Daniel and I will introduce these 4 guests one by one. And then they will have a chance through our questions, through our curiosities to share with us a little bit their impressions about this city and what it means to be foreign and Black and also Czech. We also have a Czech in our group in this beautiful city. So I will start presenting Fedorah. Hi, Fedorah. I'm just going to read out a nice introduction about you. Federer Filippo is a Haitian-Belgian-American singer, actress, poet, and performer from New York with over 15 years of experience on the stage. Her poetry is most often in spoken word style, which she crafted while living in Paris. She has recently joined the Prague scene, where she enjoys performing and occasionally hosting poetry nights. We also have with us Ryan. Ryan Prazer is a veteran performer and event booker from UK with over 15 years experience in bringing communities of all backgrounds together through music, art, and #respect, #love music, hate racism, #respect the arts. By the way, we're going to talk about these hashtags in a while. Daniel.
Good. So we also have Vojtec, who was born in Prague just a few months before the Velvet Revolution. He's working as a programmer. Besides that, he is also a writer, musician, semi-amateur cinematographer, and photographer. And finally, we have Marko Thul. Marko is a French poet living in Prague for more than 12 years with his wife and kids. He loves reading, writing, and sharing about life, love, and poetry. He organizes regular events of poetry in Prague.
Great. So hello, everybody. The introductions have been made. Now, as we want to delve a little bit in the social aspect of the city, we have some statistics. According to some demographics of Prague, we have about 2 million inhabitants in Prague, out of which 65% are Czech, 10% are other nationalities, 25% are nationalities not declared, and 1.2% are Blacks. The main minority groups are Ukrainian, Slovakian, Russian, Vietnamese, and American. So it seems to be a cluster of intermingled nationalities and minority groups. And it's just fascinating every time for me just to understand how the communities work together and what are the main aspects of collaboration or supporting each other. And I would like to start by asking Fedorah, what does it mean to you to be foreign and Black in a city like Prague?
So thank you. There are so many great things about it, right? Because you get to interact with people. You never know who you're going to run into and where they're from. So that's a very, very cool and interesting part of being in Prague. As an artist, that means that you can be collaborating with people from all over. But given the very low percentage, as you mentioned, of specifically my demographic, that makes it very difficult, on the other hand, to really thoroughly share your culture and feel that you are sometimes welcomed, feel that you are being heard adequately. It poses challenges. Visibility is a huge one, because then as an artist, you just realize that there are so few of us that, one, it puts a huge burden of those of us who are in the forefront, but it also can lead to things like feeling lonely, feeling underrepresented, feeling lost. So it's not all bad. It's not all good. It's a combination of both, for sure.
I would have a follow-up question, because I think it's a very important topic. First of all, did you have different experiences in Prague as compared to other cities? You mentioned in your bio, you spent time in France, you spent time in other cities. So what is the difference? Has Prague welcomed you in a better way as compared to other cities? Was it more open, or it's just a work in progress? How's your feeling about that?
Yeah, that's a really good and pertinent question. And I would preface this by saying that all of my views expressed are my views. So everyone's experiences are going to be different based on exactly what neighborhoods you're living in and what your situation is coming in here. Students have very different experience from myself. So that being said, I came here not as a student, but as someone who already finished studying and who was going into the workplace and then coming onto the artistic scene. And I came straight from Paris, and it was a huge culture shock. In the beginning, I did not feel welcomed I did not have a community at that time. And because of the fact that I'm Black and that I stand out, it was just a combination of constantly being stared at and dealing with uncertainty, not knowing what it is that people were thinking, because they wouldn't approach me to ask any questions. They would just stare at me or make comments or whisper to each other. And so that, for me, coming from Paris, where I was not stared at, walking down the street, it didn't matter. There are plenty of blacks, there are people who are brown who look like me. So it was a big shock to come here. Also not knowing the language, that's obviously a big thing because I didn't know the language. So here I was as an American, a Black American, coming into a country where I must have just looked very foreign. And so for me, it was a huge adjustment period, and it did feel kind of cold and it felt unwelcoming because I just didn't know. I didn't know how to fit myself into this new dynamic. But over time, that's obviously changed as I've made Czech friends and expat friends, and a lot of them in the arts. But yeah, when you come here completely out of nowhere, it was a weird experience. Now, that being said, again, I want to preface, I have lived in China as well for a year. And some will argue, well, in China, you would have had a similar experience. However, I would qualify that and say no. Yes, in China, they stare at you. When you are Black, when you are even white, they will stare at you because you are so different. But the difference that I saw, and this is purely cultural, Czech people just are different from the Chinese. The Chinese would smile at me a lot. They would come up to me. They would try to talk to me, even in Chinese. They would like interact and they would ask me a lot of questions. So for me, that made it obvious that they're curious. They just have never seen people like me, but they're curious. Whereas in Prague, the lack of communication, the distance that Czech people tend to keep is what made me feel unwelcome at first.
Very, very pertinent points, and very understandable. The communication is the first and key point in trying to reach out to somebody and understand their perspective, where they come from, who they are, and what it means to be here, be part of an international community. Well, thank you so much for this very beautiful reply. And I think Daniel has something to add.
It actually segues very nicely because that idea of the artistic communities and ways to welcome foreigners in is really, really important. And we'll direct this to Vojtec. Vojtec, you've been here all your life, and you are part of that artistic community. And my question to you is about audience. When you produce your various art forms, how do you consider audience in any part of the process? How that your sense of audience may have factored into your journey as a producer of music and other art forms?
I mean, it definitely is. When it comes to music, it's great that you have people that are going to listen to your music, that are coming again and again to concerts. Without that, it wouldn't make sense, really.
Yeah. Has that audience changed in your time as a younger man, or even as a kid, to now how audiences do come? I read in the intro about Ivan Klima talking about festivals and music festivals and things like that. Have you seen an evolution of audience in your time in Prague?
It's hard to answer in the first place, because for me, the moment when I started to go to concerts was like maybe 2006 or something like that. When I don't think since then it's changed that much, or maybe it's hard to see when you're going to concerts all the time, or it's not that big of a change when you compare it to, I don't know, before 1989 and after that, or early 90s. And that's a time I didn't experience.
I would have a follow-up question, if I may, to Vojtec. Do you believe that music is the best channel to reach out to different minorities or ethnicities? Or do you feel that just communication and just coming out to people and speaking out is better? Many times I'm confronted with foreign languages which I wish I knew and I don't. But if I hear a song in Korean, for example, and it's so emotional and I'm just going to give the BTS example because I have some teenagers here around me who are into Asian music and Asian stuff, and I don't understand anything. But I just saw them perform live, and they were, even if I didn't understand a word of it, the gestures and the love symbols and all of that, I was just taken away. No matter what your language is or what your culture is, just say something, express something, and it's going to reach out as long as it is sincere and as long as it's come from within with honest feelings. So that's why somehow I wanted to reach out to this small conclusion.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I just meant it in a way that with poetry or with this kind of art form where you have more chance to interact with people, to understand what they are saying, you will tend to also talk to them. You will maybe want to get to know them. With music, it's a bit different. It's like just one directional. Very often. It doesn't really matter if you're very often listening to, I don't know, Czech band singing in broken English or English band. The genre will be very similar. So it's not even like transmitting the culture.
Very true. Thank you very much, Vojtec.
Yeah.
Ryan, hi. I'm supposed to ask you a question, but before I ask you that, I'm gonna start with a follow-up question actually. What about these hashtags? It's amazing that you send us your bio, and out of 2 lines, 1 line is just about hashtags, and they're so beautiful. They're about respect, they're about hate racism, they're about love music, respect the arts. I was just amazed to see that you send us, the essential information about you through certain hashtags that are very important. So please tell me about the hashtags.
So that's literally it. So for a long time, I've kind of advocated these things, that art should be met with respect, and that so for a long time, Love Music, Hate Racism was actually an organization, a charity in my town that was putting on events to try and bring the cultures together. They were clashing very hard. There's a very multicultural mix again in my hometown of Luton in England. There's a history of gang violence, there's stabbing, shootings, there's awful crime there. But to counteract that, we created, me, my father, and a group of other musicians and artists created Love Music, Hate Racism, where every weekend there'd be at least one place where people of all communities would be playing there. There'd be an Irish dancer, there'd be an African singer, there'd be an Indian performer doing something, and they would just bring the communities together. So since those days, maybe like 15 years ago, maybe 13 years, maybe, I don't know, for a long time, I've been trying to capture that in an essence and capture that in a bottle. And when I came to Prague 5 years ago, my intention was to do that same thing, try and bring different communities together. I seen the idea of Bohemia, the concept of Bohemia, this place where artists live and they communicate and collaborate and make bigger projects. And it comes with another idea that the rising tide helps all ships. So I came up with Rightful Respect Records. It was my company, my bar here in Prague. It was just a small little bar, but I had a stage where people could come and they could perform any night of the week. They could express themselves and meet with other people in different communities. So I had music producers meeting up with theatre goers, and then they made a project together. And then I had gamers meeting up with musicians, and they were like, let's do a project. And then they did a gaming tournament together. It's about getting all these different people that are normally in their own box doing their own thing, but when they come together, they can actually do something pretty good, make something beneficial to them, to my place, and to anyone else that comes around to see it, and that all came from the concept of respect. I give you a stage, you come here, bring your friends, and let's make a party. Let's put different people together and see what happens. What was the other hashtag there?
It was about the arts, about hate racism, and about music and respect. So
yeah. I
think
so I hear all of them there. Yeah, that's good.
Your answer is just amazing. And as soon as I read the word respect, which is, I think, the most important thing, even more important than love itself, and I understand now why you are such an essential guest to our podcast about Prague, because your projects just sound amazing. And one main question I still have for you, if you met any obstacles, because you were talking about issues and problems in England, what were the obstacles for you in Prague? Have you met any obstacles, or are you working on that?
I'm working on it right now. I currently work for a hostel here in Prague, similar location. The bar shut down due to COVID, but Bricks Hostel I work at, I'm running their events. So I'm trying to do the same thing there, bring different communities. We have a jam session, we have a quiz, we have poetry. We're going to have all kinds of different things there and try and build that community up again. After the pandemic, people are kind of getting back on stage again, trying to reach their audiences again and get back on their feet. But for me, I don't know. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
The obstacle, if
going off topic.
Any kind
obstacles, yes. So obstacles, they're for me personally, the obstacles have come from my friends and their inhibitions. My friends are the most talented, amazing, beautiful people around. And it's only through them that I've ever had success. Because I'm the kind of guy, I'm very similar to Prague in the sense of I feel like a threshold, the doorway, an entry point for a lot of people to discover something else or someone else, or a link to something that can put their career on the next step. I may not be on the highest pedestal myself, but I always kind of have managed to find people that link together. And these friends, these people, they don't always have the confidence in themselves. They don't always have the strength to pull it out of themselves. And that's not necessarily a cultural thing or a diversity thing. That's a society thing more than anything. So I would say anything to if I can say something to any performer out there, believe in yourself. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, your friends will come and support you. Your friends believe in you. If they're going to spend their time on you, damn, you should too.
Wow.
That's
amazing. Amazing speech, amazing reply. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that really goes right to the spirit of my question to you, Marko. You have spread the value of open mic poetry. We've all been at these events, and I wonder about your process in imagining that in the first place and making these things happen. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. So actually, it's funny because a couple of weeks ago, the last event was exactly 5 years after the first one. And basically, I mean, in Prague, there always has been, I think, like a lot of cultural events and a lot of opportunity to share. And there used to be like an event in English, like called Alchemy Reading, which was always like having like one feature performer and after an open mic, which was happening once per month until it's finished for different reasons. So this, I really enjoyed it. And which is addressing also one topic we had already, is that I wanted something in French. Initially, I was thinking I really would love to have an event in French. So I started to talk about it with friends and things. Slowly, it kind of took place and organized something. So now 5 years ago in Kampa, in this small cultural space, willing to do it for a French audience. And actually, I remember it was pretty funny because I arrived there around 6, to prepare the room, everything, and I was alone. At 7 p.m. I was still alone. At 8 I was still alone. Then finally 2 friends come. So we start to discuss and saying like, whatever, we are 3, we'll talk about poetry, read each poems. One of them just got a call from the work, had to leave. I was again alone, but then 2, 3 other people came. So again, we restarted. We are reading poems, very nice. Then suddenly another friend of mine arrived, but with 6 other people, like Spanish, very noisy, chatty, and very nice. And so we started, some of them like to read also some poems in Spanish, which was starting to be nice. Then we were moving to English, talking, sharing, was super nice. Then 2 Korean girls arrived there who started the same, to share poetry in English, a bit in Korean. And then they started singing in Latin, actually. And we discussed that the day after they were supposed to sing in the Rudolfinum. So this was really thrilling, like as a finish, it was really great. And we all talked together, continued. So once this happened, I was like, yeah, this was an amazing evening. I want to do it again. French, obviously, I won't have enough success because I think I don't know much poets, French poets here in Prague. I mean, a bit, but I mean, Fedorah writes a bit in French. I mean, a bit, but it's not very representative, let's say. But I didn't want also to have it only in English, because I love English. I write in English, but I was like, yeah, let's have it with all the languages, because personally I really love even to listen. I mean, you all came to the event, like to listen a bit of Icelandic, a bit of Spanish, a bit of Russian, a bit of this. Sometimes you understand a few words, sometimes none at all, but you have this melody. And so that's where it came this way. Then also to have musician as a support, because it's also an additional language, and it also creates an atmosphere and a support as well for some people. I mean, including myself, I feel much more confident with a bit of music behind me. And with this idea also to have it very inclusive. For me, it's very, from the beginning, very important. You can be a published poet, have many prizes and sing, or you can read for the first time your first poem. You will have the same time of audience and time of on the floor. I mean, that's very important for me, that especially for all artistic expression, I think I've seen in my life sometimes a bit too much like elitism in arts. And I think in some, I don't know if you're a surgeon, if you're an engineer, I think it's very fully legitimate. If you're also, I don't know, a violin player, you need definitely technique. But especially when it comes to poetry, when it's word, I think anyone is legitimate to read, write great poems and share them. So that's kind of the big picture of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and something Vojtec said earlier just really resonated with me. Your intermissions, or as you say, maybe you waited from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, people are coming and they're discussing, and then maybe performance aspects happen and people quiet down, but then people linger afterwards. That idea of the social community, can you comment further on that? Was that part of your scheme as well, to kind of create just free-flowing discussions too?
Mm-hmm. But this, I would say, first is connected really with how I am, because I'm quite extrovert person and I really love people and talking with people and meeting, like I remember even when I was younger student with one friend, we do like our conquest of the world. So each day, like go here, there randomly. And the goal was just to meet people and talk and make connections, because this way you meet people you wouldn't otherwise, let's say. And I really like in this, all this poetry evening, and that's true, like said Vojtec, like to have like a lot of breaks and a lot of moments where we have time to discuss. Plus also what I love in Prague is that it's more correct even to speak about like communities, like poets communities and things like this, with many connections and with a really like this very cooperative mood. And it happened even, for instance, with some friends, like whether from Object Paradise, from some Czech friends, to organize an event the same day because of lack of coordination, because of not caring. No one will feel, like, oh, why, how come you did that? Or like, no, everyone will just encourage, will eventually even like promote event of each other, and not thinking like if someone goes to the other event, it's a competition or no, actually it's great. I mean, it's good if it's as many events as possible. And if one evening you have the choice of 2 or 3 events of poetry, I mean, what a luxury. I mean, where else but in Prague can you have this, like it's, and I think it works quite well, because I mean, now we have more and more like contacts between all of these communities, a bit helping each other. Each one is going to one event here, one event there, and it's really great. I mean, I really like this dynamic and this very cooperative thing. I've met many people here like who have great artistic work, like therefore like strong ego in this sense, like, kind of confidence and thing, but super cooperative and humble at the same time, and not like trying to be, oh, me, I'm a master or whatever, and you, whatever. Yeah. So I really like this attitude. I find it very, constructive and positive.
One of my favorite memories is when we were at Kampa Park, which is in the center of Prague on the east side, and our usual place for having the poetry was being occupied by salsa dancers, and we, we enjoyed that, and they may have enjoyed us, but we found ourselves a little bit further on a hillside and just made that our venue. And it was getting dark, so the lamp from the park kind of was our light by which we can read. And I just love that flexibility and art in several places in the park. So fond memory of mine.
Nice. You shouldn't have mentioned that, because I love salsa. I love dancing salsa, and somehow here in Berlin, the salsa community is kind of separate from the poets community, from the spoken word artists. And I've been trying to create projects to unite them, to bring them together somehow. And I'm still working on that, because that would be a dream of mine, to bring the salsa communities together with our artistic communities. And just to add something to what Marko said, I really loved what he said, this humbleness that we artists have when we get together, and we share, we feel like we're on the same level, and it just empowers you to have the confidence that you need to have in order to share your inner aspects or your most intimate feelings with people that you don't know, but they will welcome you because they will be on the same level with you. And that's what I think is the magic about artistic communities in particular.
I definitely fully agree with this. And even if there is like still for me, like one of the connection I really would like still to develop is with also the Czech communities, because there is also a very large scenes of poetry in Czech. But I think bridges are possible. Obviously, the language is always kind of small obstacle, and we don't need. I mean, it's good that both exist. But I know, like with Alex, so one friend musician with whom we are always, who is always supporting our open mics. We attended already some Czech speaking scenes, and with only Czech people around, not necessarily, and we are always super welcome. And people even enjoy, even if they wouldn't understand French or maybe a bit more English, but doesn't matter, always very welcome. And so this is one thing, and I think on many issues here, it's one thing that is sometimes still missing, like more bridges between all of these expat communities and the Czech communities. In Prague, you have some. I mean, we even have one Czech person in here. But in my mind, like when you are doing presentation, I was having the small joke in my head, you know, like, oh yeah, in Prague we even have Czech people, you know. And sometimes, especially this feeling, you know, that you're on the table, you meet people from all around the world, and the most exotic is almost a Czech person, you know. And,
beautiful. All right, Daniel, if you agree with me, we should move also to the fun part of our podcast. The best things about Prague, or what are the things that we would miss about it, because I really want in the end our viewers or listeners to feel this joy in visiting Prague and searching for artistic communities and explore and learn something and grow together.
And while you guys are thinking, I have an example too. So and may touch upon Ryan's situation. I just learned the other day, and I haven't fact checked this, Prague is the highest per capita ownership of dogs city in the world. And I've got one in the other room, and Ryan has one. And but when we walk the parks of Prague, you know, people are commonsensical. They will have their dogs on leashes, but there are some leash-free zones and ways that the dogs and the people interact. And you know, maybe things could go wrong, but let's keep it fun. You know, generally speaking, dogs are pretty great.
Yeah,
and
so
for that matter too, but I just think that the Prague and Bohemians love their animals.
Yeah, like that's definitely a point. I don't know if Vojtec can corroborate this for me, but I heard that the reason for this is that during the communist period, the only time you'd be let out after curfew was to walk your dog. So people would get a dog so that they'd be allowed out for a smoke or something after curfew. Vojtec, can you is that fact checked? Is that
I'm not sure if people are actually doing it, but I have friends that would, you could only go so far, like you could go.
Yeah, like 500 meters or something.
500 meters from your place. So I would have friends that lived close to each other, and one of them had a dog, so one would go to the other one and then they would walk the dog together.
Yeah, that's it. Like meet up in the park, sit on the bench and have a few drinks after dark kind of deal. And onto like your point about what to not miss about Prague. I mean, the thing for me, I'm a bartender, career bartender, events manager. So drinking is a heavy part of my everyday lifestyle, in a good and a bad way. So it means that I deal with people who are experiencing Prague for the first time every day. They always ask me, where do I go? What do I do? And I say, do what I would do, which is go to an area, ask someone at the bar, where's good? You know, like they come to me and I'll be like, okay, around this area, there's this place, this place, this place. These are my favorite places to go because it's not the typical experience of Prague that a tourist would want to have. My advice for you, if you come to Prague, is don't do it as a tourist would. Do it as a local or an expat would. Right. Mm-hmm. So you go to your local bar and you ask your bartender, hey, is there any events going on this week? Something local in like a poetry club or a comedy club. And then you find these small alcoves, all the side streets and all the things on the way there too, you know? So that was how I kind of got around here, and that's how I found all these amazing people. And that's where the best people hang out, is in the dirtiest, darkest corners of Prague. I can vouch for it.
To be honest, whenever I choose a city to visit, there are two important things: the artistic community and the food. Like, I need to have good food. So for me, food is extremely important, and I don't want to go in places that are set up especially for tourists that go just one day and then, they're never going to come back again. So we were talking about that, and you mentioned the dumplings, and I put it in the title, not because we need recipes, but because, I want to know certain things that I should try out in Prague, or certain places where I should go, as Ryan said, where the locals would go, not where the tourists would go.
We talked about food. Now, here's the thing. Here's the reason I brought up dumplings, right? Because when the first thing I think about food, I'm like, okay, it's either fried cheese, what is it called? Smajak, or dumplings. I lived in China. It's a different kind of dumpling. But I have never seen so many different types of dumplings, sweet and salty, in my life. I've been to a restaurant where there were like 20 types of dumplings, because essentially dumplings are like a type of outer, I don't know, is it like made with bread? It's like a special type of bread that they then, on the inside, they fill it. So you can have sweet dumplings with every kind of fruit imaginable, or you can have salty dumplings, which are preferably savory, I prefer. So they'll have like, fried, fried bacon and onions, mushrooms, whatever. Like, you fill it with all kinds of stuff. And then there's like my favorite also, which is kulaida, which is a type of soup that they make here. They have they go mushroom picking. So when they go mushroom picking, it's a huge deal. And then they make this amazing soup with these wild mushrooms that people have picked, and they'll just have it's amazing. It's my favorite soup ever. So those are a couple of things. Like, there's your goulash type stuff, your thick, rich, heavy sauces. But goulash is technically not even Czech in origin, so that's why I don't mention it. I just think you cannot talk about Czech Republic without talking about the dumplings and the fried cheese. The fried cheese is great, just not good for your figure.
All right.
I would have for me like three things that would come to my mind straight. Like, if you mention this, like, one is like so many parks and places to go out, like whether with dogs, with kids, or even by your own, and you are welcome everywhere. Like, I mean, that's also nice. I mean, with dogs, there's even a cinema you can go with your dog, like in the Bioko. With kids, the same. You are really welcome everywhere, which is not necessarily the case in all countries. Like in France, sometimes if you come somewhere with kids, you are feeling really that you are annoying everyone, even when you are fantastic behaved kids like mine. One other thing here also connected with all that is like it's very highly tolerating city, and it's very seldom here you would be annoyed by anyone or by the police or by whatever, except if you do something really wrong. But in general, it's very tolerant for many things. Like, if you gather with people, if you do this, if you do events, for instance, all the events I did, I never really ask anyone, I just go to the park, sometimes even with a loudspeaker, with the music, with the thing, never had any issue. And maybe I can tell this funny story. Like, once when we were also in Grebovka, and it was already after 10 p.m. and we didn't pay attention, but it was obviously too noisy because we had the loudspeakers, the music, people clapping. Then the police came, but very nice, they came like, good evening, asking what we are doing. We discussed with them. We explained them what we did. We said, okay, so sure, we'll cut the loudspeaker, we'll cut the music, we will stop clapping. They also try to hide a bit the alcohol, but without insisting. I was like, yeah, so cool. And what we can do is that I will read the next poem, in a loud voice, and you will tell me if it's too loud or if we can continue. And I just read that and think people don't clap, do like this. And the policeman are like, okay. And they just left. It was maybe 10:30, 11:45, and we could continue the event for 1 more hour with no problem. And indeed not disturbing anyone, because I think sometimes it can even be nice to have someone reminding you, like, hey, stop doing noise. Some people are sleeping, because you don't want to annoy people. Just, in the emotion, in the enthusiasm of the evening, you forget about it. But so this is something, impossible, unfortunately, in France, or very rare. And I think it's quite significant here that this kind of situation that are really flexible, and you organize and you manage, and everyone, is it's something I like about the city very much.
I agree with you. I feel that, they are there to be relational and keep the order. but not to beat down. I mean, but this has been a journey for a lot of people, and I don't know if Wojtek, if you have that kind of perception about how people get along in the city just because there's live and let live mentality. I don't know if that's something that you've experienced.
I think that this is sort of in general Czech mentality that I'm not going to bother you, you're not going to bother me, so, and that you can do more or less whatever you want unless it's going into space of someone else. But whatever the people are protesting against, whether it's they don't like COVID or they're protesting against the government, you never, even if the protest is not announced, the police will be always very patient, sometimes even too patient in some cases.
I have an extra question for all of our guests. Actually, I have two. The first question is, if there is in Prague a place where you should definitely go, like for example, we have here in Berlin Tempelhof. Tempelhof is actually the expression of freedom, of doing anything you want to do and being dressed the way you want to be dressed and expressing yourself the way you are. So it's a must-go place for artists. Is there a place like that in Prague? That's the first question.
For me, I would say there's many places, and it's like I said before, it's in these dark alleyways, in these hidden corners where you find the most magnificent bars, tea houses, little picnic places, spots to go and camp up even for the night. There's so many hidden corners of Prague, and all of them have secrets. And these secrets are mostly filled with like creative minds like us doing something weird and crazy. Like, you want to walk down the street in a costume, that's totally fine. There's probably 16 English lads dressed as cucumbers coming down the street on the other side. Like it's a place of freedom. You do what you want as long as, like Vojtec said, you're not infringing on someone else. I think come to Prague as yourself, however you want to be, and you will find a place to slot yourself in. There's definitely something for everybody here.
Yeah, just to react on what said Ryan, where I fully agree, is that somehow the description you gave of Tempelhof would almost work as the description of Prague. So it's a bit everywhere, like in the city here and there. Like, yeah.
I understand. Well, the thing about Berlin is that it's divided into many districts, and that makes it somehow difficult. The artistic districts have the tendency to switch places from one decade to another. So it's understandable, but I believe Prague is smaller, both in size and in population. So it would make sense that you have everywhere small bits of the same spirit.
Just to finish that off, that if there is one district maybe where there's a concentrated collection of artists, it would be Žižkov, Prague 3. There's so many little bars, little camps, little events going on every day of the week, and most of the people you will see performing will be there at some point during the week in Žižkov.
Is that a street or what is it?
It's a district of Prague. Prague 3, it's called Žižkov. That's it. And that whole district is full of bars. It's got I think the Guinness Book of World Records, most bars in one street is Vojtec. Is that right, Vojta? I always pronounce it wrong.
Vojtec, he's always our facts guy.
Yeah.
I honestly think it used to be Koněvova, at least like the street with largest amount of bars in Czech Republic on one street. One thing, what you should do when you come to Prague, besides coming to Žižkov, have a beer, obviously. go outside of city center, whether it's Žižkov, Vinohrady, and since like any kind of social life in Prague and in Czech Republic is so affordable, so it's the same thing for locals. You can go out every day. When I lived in Paris, when you would go out to a bar, you would have 2 beers and you would feel like you're bleeding, and you can eat only baguettes for the rest of the month, which might not be that bad, but in Prague, you can go out every day. You never have to worry that if you enter a bar, if the beer will be €3 or 1 million euros or something like that. You don't have to worry about that. So if you come as a tourist and you just go from one place to another, you will meet a lot of locals, a lot of expats.
Yeah, and I think it's good for our listeners to hear a few areas. Žižkov has that generations-long history of not just pubs, but musicians who play in them and events, and that spilled over to other areas. An outdoor park that I think is very valuable for us to mention is Rigrovi, and it's smaller than Letna, which has a similar sort of beer garden aspect to it. And it's a place that I think many tourists to Prague wouldn't really know to go to, and yet it's just a wonderful place to be. People can obviously go to quieter places, the Stromovka area, or I love Vyšehrad, the other castle, the older castle that's on the east side of the river. And that's kind of a quiet, maybe not so happening scene, but that's actually happening too, to Ryan's point. It's one of those, places that, is there, but you don't think of like how serene and lovely it can be, a great date type of place, so I think it's really wonderful that we have the more boisterous parts of Prague and of course Old Town, lots and lots of places for that. And then the places that may be more strollable. Kampa Park is another place on the Malastrana side that I think we should mention.
Sorry, can I jump in on this since everybody talked about it? I live in Žižkov. I moved here from Andil, which is another kind of well-known area. It's closer to the river, but Žižkov is the place. It's where everything's happening. And I cannot talk about happening places without unfortunately mentioning Ryan's bar, which no longer is with us, rest in peace. But Ryan's bar was the place to go. I'm sorry, that place, I have made some of my best friends in Prague in his bar. So I personally would be like, any bar that Ryan's working at, go to his bar, because what he said is true. He won't say this, he's humble, but you meet so many different types of people. I had never played Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, I'm a semi-nerd, but I had never played Dungeons and Dragons. And then I went to his bar and there were just these people and they're like, let's just do a quick round. And I was like, okay. And that's how I got introduced to it. So really meeting people that you would maybe never cross, because I would never cross gamers' paths, never. And now some of my best friends are gamers, including Ryan. So I just want to say that.
Ryan, I feel you have to say something about it.
I mean, it was my pride and joy. It's the best thing I've ever done. Our 3 bar will forever live in memory. It changed my life. It changed a lot of people's lives. And now I have friends for life. That's what I mean when I say these communities get brought together. And I'm happy to bring them together because it means I have wonderful friends for the rest of my life.
Yeah, actually, for the record, I also may organize there the release of one of my last books, so it's nice as well. So I think we almost all did something there, yeah.
That's amazing. So then, for the people who would like to go now in Prague, Ryan, where's the place to go now?
So I'm splitting myself a few different ways. Bricks is the hostel where I run events. So I book weekly events there. There's a comedy show tomorrow. In fact, we try to have bi-weekly comedy, weekly jam session, weekly quiz. If I'm not there, then I've just made my controversial yet shocking return to Sad Man's Tongue, a place that I was at for 2 years. We got to number 1 on TripAdvisor in the whole city when I was working there. So they've called me back after a 3-year layoff, and I'm doing some shifts there. And if not Sad Man's Tongue, for their live music and their amazing burgers and great service, then go to O'Shea's. It's a small Irish bar, sports bar. That's where I do my weekend shifts. And there's cheap cocktails on all summer. It's €4 cocktails, and I've been making what I call pina coladas with banana in that are selling like hotcakes. So yeah, come down and get some of them. Just don't order mojitos or you'll get a leer.
Okay, we're getting down to the part where you can all plug in your events or your projects that you're working for. That's going to be the ending of it. But before that, Daniel, do you have a last question for the guests?
Not off the top of my head. We've made our life here, whether that's for a couple of years or, in my case, forever. And I just think it's an interesting part of the soul of the city that, there's kind of a revolution of people that come in and out. And Prague is one of the most touristed places in Europe. But I think there's such mainstays, and whether these are the places that we've just mentioned or the events and the people that we meet. And so, yeah, I guess my question to the group is, why Prague? What drew you here to make it your mainstay, again, whether it's for a couple of years or for your whole life?
Actually, on this one, all what we said, and plus for me, I mean, I'm literally in love with Prague from first time I came here, like was when I was 18. Then I came here for my studies 15 years ago. Then I left, and then when I came back to France to finish my study, it was just like, when will I come back to Prague? Plus, I met my wife in the meanwhile, but even in any case, I was already so much in love with Prague and her as well, so it was such an easy decision. But the city has something, really a soul. I mean, there are some city, I think each city has a soul, but in Prague it's so strong. I mean, now to be honest, I will always be a foreigner here, but I feel so much home here. Like plus I moved a lot when I was a kid, so I've never felt home like I feel home here, like in such a strong way. I really strongly love this city.
Yeah, I didn't choose it. I was born here, so.
Okay, well, I guess the question for you would be, why didn't you leave? Like,
I did briefly. I left for Paris, where I stayed almost a year and met this person.
For our listeners, Vojtec is pointing out to Fedorah.
Different reasons, mostly like visa, work-related reasons, affordability reasons. So yeah.
All right. Ryan.
I guess that leaves me. Yeah. So I came here on a whim. My passport arrived the day before I got on my flight. I just saved up some money. It was like, screw this, I'm sick of England, you're all racist and stupid, let's get out. And I left. So I got on a plane, I came to Prague, and when I got here, I knew one person. That person, we're no longer friends, unfortunately. I ended up sleeping in a park for a couple of weeks. I slept on a few sofas. I met a guy who was making narcotics in his bathroom, which was lovely. No, not actually lovely. Like, it was bad. It was Breaking Bad. Anyway, I came along to Prague just for the opportunity to do something different, to get away from people and to see what was out here, And 5 years later, I've managed to build this community. I've managed to build these friends, and I have my love, my life here. I kind of built everything I ever wanted and more. And it's all because of the opportunities that Prague has afforded me. I could never have done this anywhere else,
I like that Marko had said, I fell in love with the city and I fell in love with my wife. I'm in the same boat. I have a wife here who's Czech. And I guess we don't rank where our loves are, but it's all good.
That's good to know. My love is also on this call. I think I'm only here because of him. I think when I told my mother I was moving to Czech Republic, she asked if it was Czechoslovakia and if it was somewhere near Russia. So that tells you how much I was planning to move here. But that being said, I do want to talk about opportunities. I feel similarly to Ryan in the same way, but about America, that's maybe controversial, but it's like, fuck you, you're all racist, goodbye. And I have to say, as I'm saying that, because we were talking about police earlier, and I didn't get to say anything, but I really, really want to point that out. That's a big deal here. We had the Black Lives Matter protests and the police, and it was not supposed to happen because it was not organized properly the right way. And the police did not stop the protest. They did not pelt us with rubber bullets. They did not come and use force on us. They literally escorted us all the way to the American embassy to protest. So like, just to say shout out to the police here, but like I have never felt safer in a city, and that includes Paris. I have never looked at a police officer here and felt like, oh my God, my life is in danger, which in some cities for a Black person, when the police are not your friends, period. So I just want to say that like, it is a great place to actually party and go crazy and still, and even then, like Vojtec said, sometimes the police are so lenient. Like even during COVID, I had a similar experience to Marko, I think, where we were doing like rehearsals for a play, and the officer came to tell us basically like, oh, you need to be standing 2 meters apart and with no mask. But then with a mask. But then he was like, but what are you doing? And we're like, we're practicing a play. And he's like, can I be in it? You know, and I'm like, that would never happen in the States. We'd be packing our stuff and running, you know? And it was in Grabovka. So I'm just like, man, the police here are nice. But yeah, as an actress, as a partially an actress, I would also say like, God, there's no place that beats Prague in terms of acting opportunities. Like if you're an actor, you need to get your butt here. You need to register with every agency. You need to audition for things because there's like all films. I didn't know this when I first moved here from Paris. I was in love with Paris and I'm like, I want to make it over there, but it's expensive. You can't buy cheap beer, as Vojtec already said. It's just very expensive. And when I got here, I realized, and I didn't know, that a lot of movies use Prague to even dub Paris. Like it's the cheap Paris because all major productions pass through here. Extras are cast on a weekly basis. My friends have been in movies from The Gray Man, shows like Wheel of Time, Carnival Row. I was an extra in Army of the Dead. You come here, you can have zero acting experience and still be casting commercials, or you can have acting experience and be cast in Netflix and Amazon shows. So it's a great opportunity for actors.
I was just going to say as well, for filmmakers and film producers, the reason for some of that is because it's so cheap to rent certain places and it's so easy to work with the city to hire certain outdoor spaces as well. And obviously the freaking landscape here is amazing too, you know? So if you're a filmmaker or producer, like it's a no-brainer.
Amazing. Wow. We already feel very, very motivated to come to Prague, and it seems that you have a lot of support, no matter the community you're searching for, or no matter the project that you're into, or the inclination that you have. I still have some questions for you, just one question for all of you, actually. Your best experience or your craziest experience about Prague can be wonderful, but can also go into the direction of being a bit weird or wicked.
I mean, mine are too hot for TV, some of them, but the main one is R3, the bar, the community, the artists, and the memories, man. That's it. That's the craziest thing is, holy hell, I've done all this in 5 years and I did it on my own.
For me, I don't have one thing coming to my mind, because the first that come to my mind also as well are not necessarily the best to share for an audience. But the thing is that I love here is that you always have small things. You know, you always come from one surprise to another just by the quality of people you meet. You know, also maybe like mentioning like it's funny, like everyone is mentioning the police. I didn't mention the French police, but it's I could as well. Like, but here you meet people who are here for a reason because they love, they have some projects, they love to do music, they love to write. You know, you don't have people who stay in Prague because they want to make money. You know, they will go to London, to Dubai, to whatever. And this also, I think, is one of the parts that creates such nice communities, is that people, I think, what they really love here also as well is that my first stereotype when I came here were like Czech people until they can go with their friends for beers in the evening and go to their hata, so small countryside house in the weekend or in the nature in the weekend. All the rest comes a bit after. And I find it pretty wise. I mean, I'm kind of Czech for this, meaning that I have a lot of point of view, a lot of things, a lot of involvement in many things. But in the end, like it's very important to have this focus on family, friends, outdoors, because you need, you know, this relation to yourself, to others, to the nature, to do anything else in a constructive manner. And I think these roots of are very healthy for each one and for the society, I think, yeah.
I guess for me, like, the big amount of bars, venues, places where you can meet different people, then even bring them from one place to another, connect them. I think that's amazing.
Not weird. Well, weird, but I also took it in a very bad way, and then I'll do one cool one. So
Okay.
the bad, weird one. So like I said, I'm Black in Prague. We just have to face that, period. One day I was coming from some really cool events. I was kind of on a high. I mean, on a high, like emotionally. And stop laughing, Ryan. And it was super cool. And I was looking amazingly, maybe a little bit too much Afrocentric, because I had like my very big earrings that I got from Kenya, and I had like, yes, I had very like Afrocentric makeup and clothing on, whatever. And I got to, so I live in Zhishkov, like I said. Now Zhishkov is weird. Zhishkov is, because it's the artistic place, it's crazy and weird. So my personal experience was that one day I got to Florence, and it's like a central train station, and some Czech dude came up to me and started speaking to me in Czech, and I was like, he asked me first for a cigarette. I said, ne mam, pardon, like, sorry, I don't have one. He decided to sit down next to me. I was like, okay, cool. So then I was waiting for a bus, but I like moved slightly over on the wall, and he just moved with me. And then he kept talking to me, and I'm like, pardon, ne rozumím. I do not understand. Sorry. So I got up to leave, to cross the street. So he came behind me, and then next thing I know, he bends down, and then he just like grabs my leg, and I'm like, whoa, dude, like, what is going on, you know? And he just starts laughing, like he's calling me names, and then he's laughing, and then he just like gets off and walks across the street. And I'm like, welcome to another day in Zhishkov. You know, this is followed by the night where Vojta was walking my dog, our dog, and he comes back with his shirt soaking wet. And I said, what happened? And he said, some man threw piss out the window, and the piss hit me. And I'm like, I don't know. This will only happen in Zhishkov, though. This will only happen in Zhishkov. Some man decided to throw his urine out the window, and there you go. But the cool side of that, is the cool side of Prague, is that one time I met like all these artists, and we were in a room. We were at a specific event. It was actually like it was a Black commemoration event or whatever. And we kind of just like spent the whole day together, and like, oh, okay, you're an actress, she's an actress, you two should get to know each other. Next thing you know, I got invited to a drag show at Bike Jesus. So just for the LGBTQ plus community, I'm an ally, of course. I've hosted drag shows, and like Prague is amazing for that as well. Like the community here is so great. Like the LGBTQ plus community is great, and they host so many events, from like drag shows, drag king and drag queen shows, to drag karaoke. Great venue, great place to be. It's friendly, at least in the artistic community, I have to say, specifically in the artistic community. But so I got invited to this drag show, and people were saying like, yeah, there's going to be this really cool band on stage. So I get there, I'm listening to the band, I'm like dancing, having a great time. Then I look up at the stage, and I'm like, wait a second, that's the girl that I spent like 2 hours talking to 3 days ago. And like the other girl who was on stage with her was the girl who did my hair one time. And I'm like, oh my God, like Prague, you'll discover that Prague is a really small place at the end of the day. It's like we all either run into each other, or we're like 3 degrees of separation.
My actual favorite event that I've ever done was with Fedorah at my place. And it was for the Equal Justice Initiative. It was a fighting injustice fundraiser, basically, where we wanted to bring together. It was in reaction to the murder of George Floyd, and we wanted to raise some money to actually give some help to legal aid for the people who've been wrongly prosecuted and things like this in America, right? But what we didn't realize is that it would actually have such an impact on the people here in Prague too. So we had loads of poets come up on the stage and share some moments with us. We had some musicians come and play for us, and we had different stories told, as well as like information booklets and things like this around about Black rights and being of different backgrounds, and how it's difficult to get legal aid or support when things go wrong for you, if there's injustice or if there's discrimination in the system. But there were, I don't know, Fed, maybe like at least 3 people who by the end of the evening were crying. And it wasn't through some forced guilt or anything like this. It was, these people had come to learn. These people had come to learn. They'd never been around Black people, around Black communities, or around injustice with people. You know, some people had never even heard of racism. You know what I mean? These were the type of people that will come into this event. And by the end of it, we touched their hearts because they didn't know, they didn't realize. And we'd given them a chance to listen, be educated, and engage with the conversation without having judgment passed. And it was from the people who knew the best way to tell people. So Fedorah, maybe you've got some stories from that day of some people you spoke to, but for me, that was like just a little bit of like how one day can change someone's life and change their perspective on how they look at people, how they look at injustice, and make them an ally for any kind of fighting against discrimination, you know?
Yeah, I want to let Marko speak after this, but I have to bounce off of this. Like, that is the hope for Prague, right? Like, I have talked about the ups and the downs. Like, you know, because of my color, like there are some very negative things that I have to deal with, and that's not really necessarily endemic to Prague. That's worldwide, right? Like underrepresentation in film, underrepresentation on screen, et cetera, et cetera. But the hope that I had coming out of that event with Ryan at R3 was like, I don't know, Ryan, you can correct me, but I think we had like 70, 80 people pass through, because we had it as an all-day event. And it was on the heels of the Black Lives Matter march where the police were helping escort us. And I just was shocked at the outpouring of people that came. And let's be real, it was there. I think there were only 3 or 4 Black people, but everybody else was either Czech or in the community. And to see that there were so many people that were showing up, they wanted to be informed. They had genuine questions. They wanted to learn, and they were open to understanding. That's where I said Prague is changing. Prague is
not just that. On a day where we had no power and were lit by candles, these people still made an effort. Sorry, I'll mute myself.
No, yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing, right? Like Black people who have come here 20 years ago or so will say like their experience of Prague was very different. Like off the heels of communism, that was extremely tough because you really didn't see people who looked like me. Now you see them as students in the student community a lot, and a lot of tourism. But like to see that people in the community who live here are willing to listen, that is the hope for the future of Prague.
I think it is amazing what you guys just mentioned, how one event can change a person's life. And I believe that especially the artistic events and the artistic communities are not there just for the fun and for the entertainment, but they're also there to raise awareness and to inform and ultimately to educate people who have no idea what's going on in reality around themselves. So it's just amazing how art can reach out and do so many things with just one event, or with just one movement, or with just one hashtag, since we were talking about hashtags. So I'm already in awe about all the experiences that you shared with us, guys. And I'm just so grateful that somehow I managed to get you all together to advocate for Prague somehow, to bring some sparks of soul, as we call them. That being said, Daniel, if you have some questions, or we can just nicely finish off with letting each of our guests plug in their events or their projects.
Absolutely. And that word movement was on my mind because I want to hear from everybody their sense of the projects that they have had and will move forward. And on that motif of movement, my son, who is a 22-year-old student at Charles University for urban planning, he would like me to promote the public transportation system here in Prague. And I don't need him to have me do it. I do it I've done this since before he was born. Some nights, if I was going from one event to another, I'd lose track of time. The metro would close at midnight, and maybe I'd wait around for the night trams and whatnot, and they do happen. Or, safe city, relatively speaking, that it is, I'd walk home, and I live a little bit outside the city, so quite a walk, usually along the river, say hi to the swans, things like that. But I did want to kind of promote that, because on the nights of open museums or other festivals, there is a good liberality of how to transport people and to get them to places. I mean, yes, you can always take a Lyft or an Uber, but I just think that there's something communal about using the public transportation system. I feel it's the best in the world. Beyond Prague, you can take day trips, of course, throughout the country. But I wanted that to be maybe not just a practical point, but maybe a way, how do we get to your events and your venues and your favorite places, and not just the how, but what do you want to say about moving forward the events that you are involved with?
I'll just continue on what Daniel said. We have Žižkov Night Festival, which is a music festival that is happening in different bars, clubs, venues, which is helping in the first place the venues and the artists, but it's also interconnecting them, which is nice. There are so many music festivals throughout the years, theater festivals, so that's just great thing to do in Prague.
So maybe I will jump in to follow on one of the projects indeed that four of us here already are in, and many other of our friends of all these poet communities. We're currently working and quite advanced on a collective book of poetry, gathering many of us, and always with this same idea of inclusivity. So each of us has the same space, and we try to align as much as possible. We have many friends who are working on the graphics as well. So it's very a collective and cooperative project, and so far it's going very well. Although we try really to be all of us all the time in calls to take the decision to discuss and sing, but it's much less messy than it would sound like, so it's really good. The only other thing I would like really to promote is this open stages, and we'll have the next one 2nd of September, and usually it happens, it used to happen once per month. Now it's a bit, it depends on availabilities, but the idea is to try to have it maybe even a bit more often, especially while we can do it outside. So now the next one we'll have it on a small amphitheater outside, which is very nice location. But next one, 2nd of September in the amphitheater nearby Apolinarska, and it's beautiful location and great evenings always.
Okay, so I do a lot of acting. I have been to some of the lately I've just been to the Bricks open stage. So you may or may not run into me at some of the open jam nights, but I had a great night yesterday. I went to that and did some traditional Haitian singing in my language. So that was awesome. But mostly I'm doing a lot of stage work lately. So I've just joined Prague Shakespeare Company and have just finished a premiere, which Dan unfortunately missed, at Prague Castle, of Midsummer Night's Dream, where I play Hermia. However, the show was so successful, we are going to be continuing we've added it to the repertoire, and we will be playing it throughout the year. So if you are in Prague, take a look at Prague Shakespeare Company. Yes, they're mostly focused on Shakespeare. I will be in any of their renditions of Midsummer Night's Dream. I believe our next performance is either in October or November. We haven't confirmed the date yet, but the theater will be Divadlo bez Zabradlí, which is over by Mustek. So again, that's STA Prague. That's on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Facebook.
That's also why I was going to go last, because I might be here for a while. And also the dog's going crazy. So so you can follow me at Ryan Praiser on Twitter. I tweet about wrestling and gaming. You can follow me on Facebook, where I talk about music, events, and all of the things that I do. I've got YouTube channels. I'm going to be re-releasing my Christmas movie from last year, A Wonderful Brixmas, where I'm going to do a little director's commentary over it for this Christmas. I work at Bricks Bar and Hostel. It's a great place to come and stay if you need a place to stay in Prague. It's super cheap. Everything's close and it's in Žižkov. Apart from that, I work at O'Shea's Bar on the weekend and occasionally at Sad Man's Tongue. But generally, if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see I never shut up. I'm always doing something. Playing games, organizing meetups, doing something with a lot of people because I fear to be alone. Follow me.
Thank you guys so much. This was an amazing podcast. It being the first episode and the first podcast, I was very excited and also a bit anxious about how this will actually be and how much we will learn or how much we will understand from the issues and from the beauty of Prague. And I honestly do not have an ending sentence. I think Daniel has something beautiful. I just wanted to be spontaneous about it. And I will thank you all for being part of the soul of the city and moving our hearts and moving the soul of Prague with your projects and with your beauty. That being said, to all our followers and listeners, I hope you enjoyed our podcast. And I hope you will support the artists. We will have a link with all of their info and details and projects. Please, if you visit Prague, just check their projects, communicate, grow together. It's a beautiful community and it's just worth being part of it and growing together. Thank you, Daniel, for joining me and for helping me out with this podcast.
Before you do, just thank you to you for having us and you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I learned so much from these things. And as going back to what Vojtec said about, artistic events and meeting people, intermissions, that's just such a key takeaway for me. And we've gone this long time without even mentioning Charles Bridge. It's probably the most, identifiable part of Prague for people who come in the first place. And to some degree, that becomes sort of a cliche, right? But it's a very important bridge. And never take the cobblestones out of Charles Bridge. In that case, the police may not be so nice about things. You just leave things be. But metaphorically, I think a lot of the comments here have been to search for what's underneath the self-evident of the city. Metaphorically pick up those cobblestones, see what's underneath, leave them there. But the idea is, it's a marvelous bridge that does connect east and west. And it's just so important to cross that. And all tourists do it. But I love using that, even metaphorically, to get from one bookstore to another or whatever we're doing. So thank you for this journey because, again, I've been here 26 years, but I just feel so much more alive with conversations like this. So thank you for that.
All right. So I think we found the soul of Prague finally. I think we're only missing. Oh, hi. Oh, you look beautiful. Hi.
Yeah.
It's not a ch, it's a ch.
It's a yeah, it's a
Vojtec.
Vojtec.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there feedback? Oh, there is.
If we make any gaffe in terms of pronunciation,
And if it doesn't work, we just do it all over again.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you.